Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Grand Teton National Park in western Wyoming. The elevation here varies between 6,500 feet and over 8,000 feet on nearby peaks. The Signal Mountain Summit Road winds its way up to the 7,700-foot-high peak through dense stands of pine, fir, and spruce trees on the northwest side of the mountain. Visitors here are granted a panoramic view of Jackson Hole and the Grand Tetons, with their granite peaks jutting into the sky. With majestic views like this, millions of visitors flock to the park every year, mostly oblivious to the possible risks the animals here present. In this area, mule deer, elk, and moose are easily seen browsing and grazing their way through beautiful mountain meadows. Their calm presence belies the fact that bobcats, cougars, coyotes, wolves, and black bears, as well as grizzly bears, stalk the shadows, searching out their prey. The area around Yellowstone National Park and Grand Teton National Park have been ground zero in the study of grizzly bears for decades. Rangers track and study an estimated 1,000 or so bears to better understand the species and hone recommendations for people venturing into grizzly territory. They urge people to hike in groups of 3 or more and carry bear spray in an easy-to-access manner. But not all visitors here follow these guidelines, sometimes with dire consequences. On the afternoon of Sunday, May 19, 2024, a 35-year-old man, whom we'll refer to as Matt, was hiking up the Signal Mountain Summit Road to visit the scenic overlook. Based on descriptions of the overlook, the views are breathtaking, and he looked forward to enjoying it. Matt was visiting from Massachusetts and was stepping into a world as different as possible from his home state. As Matt trekked, he walked past numerous signs indicating that grizzly bears are in the area. The signs advise visitors to tread carefully and be alert for roaming bears. Certain parts of the mountain are very thick with plant life, cutting visibility to short distances in parts of the trail. Climbing up the trail was undoubtedly straining given the altitude difference, but the crisp mountain air compelled Matt to reach his goal. Hiking along the trail, he glanced up to see a small grizzly scampering up the trail in front of him. That's when he noticed in his peripheral vision an enormous brown mass rapidly approaching him from the side of the trail. Now, Matt wasn't unprepared for hiking in the park, and in bear country in general. He'd had the forethought to purchase and pack bear spray with him, and kept it secured on his backpack. He likely never imagined he would have to use it or even see a grizzly bear, but today's events would change his life, and not necessarily in a good way. According to sources, it isn't clear if the grizzly knocked Matt to the ground or he dropped face first to protect himself, but as he lay on the ground, the grizzly bit and tore at him ferociously. He had managed to take his bear spray into his hand before covering his head to protect himself, but couldn't dispense it before being attacked. As Matt laid still, feigning death, the bear bit him all over his body. During her frenzied attack, the sow somehow bit into Matt's bear spray canister, causing it to release its contents into the bear's face. The fog of repellent sprayed into her nose, mouth, and eyes from close range, yielding a hyperdose of the irritant in the perfect spot for maximum effect. Immediately affected by the bear spray, the sow undoubtedly gagged and coughed as her mucosal membranes burned in reaction to the spray. She turned and bolted back into the brush after rounding up her cub. Now uncertain of the bear's location, Matt remained on his stomach, waiting for the next painful bite, but it never came. Once he realized the bear had fled, Matt somehow managed to reach out for assistance. Authorities were notified of his attack, and Grand Teton National Park rangers, as well as Teton County Search and Rescue, responded to the attack location. After arriving at the attack site, they treated his injuries as best they could, and prepared him for transportation via the medical helicopter that was en route. The rugged terrain made Matt's rescue difficult, but the helicopter was able to transport him off Signal Mountain. An ambulance waited near a road junction at the base of the mountain and rushed him to St. John's Hospital in Jackson Hole. After initial treatment, Matt's condition was stabilized. Despite serious injuries, after further medical treatment, he is expected to make a full recovery. Park rangers and biologists initiated an investigation into the nature and cause of Matt's grizzly bear attack. Given that the smaller bear was sighted just before he was attacked, they concluded that Matt's attack was a case of a sow defending her cub from a potential threat. Since the cub had not participated in the attack, they deemed it a defensive attack and decided no action would be taken against the grizzly or her cub. For those of you who may have heard the scuttlebutt that the sow that attacked Matt was Bear 399, known as the Queen of the Tetons, she was found to be 6 or 7 miles away and was not involved in this attack. Following Matt's attack, the road and trail leading to Signal Mountain and its overlook were all closed to visitors to allow the bears to calm down and leave the area. Of the several hundred bears tracked and observed in the greater Yellowstone area, the bears involved in Matt's attack had never been observed by researchers. In Grand Teton National Park, only 6 bear attacks have been recorded since 1994, and none of these attacks were fatal. Researchers estimate that there are around 200 grizzlies roaming the park, and their population is stable. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Would Matt's injuries have been more severe or fatal had the sow not bitten into his bear spray canister? Would a firearm have made any difference in the outcome of this attack? With only 200 grizzlies in the park, would you have expected to run into one? Was this attack a simple case of a sow defending her cub, or was this a predatory attack? What lessons will you take away from this grizzly bear attack? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the Estuary near Squamish, British Columbia, Canada. At the north end of Howe Sound, along the Sea to Sky Highway, the town of Squamish nuzzles up to the Squamish River. The climate here is an oceanic climate with warm summers and colder winters. There are about 87 inches of precipitation that falls here each year, which creates thick stands of western cedar, Doug fir, western hemlock, and big leaf maple. The bushes beneath the upper canopy include red alder, common holly, and corn plants, which grow to form a thick and obscuring screen of emerald and brown. The animals that inhabit this temperate rainforest include black-tailed deer, elk, and moose that browse along the brushy banks of waterways. Stalking the shadows, we find predators like bobcats, coyotes, cougars, black bears, and grizzly bears. In prior decades, the industry around Squamish relied on natural resources. Industries like timber harvesting and the processing of wood products were the primary employment sources. But recently things have changed here. Old industries have faded, and new ones have risen to prominence. Tourism now tops the list as a major source of employment, and the development, like trail systems, that support it has led to some catastrophic circumstances for people in the area, as well as the grizzly bears. Around 8 p.m. on Friday, May 10th, 2024, a woman whom we will call Wilma was walking her dog, whom we will call Snoopy, along the 1.9-mile-long Estuary Trail. It is a relatively flat route that takes a little over half an hour to complete. Adjacent to town, it runs along the river on one side, with buildings, a highway, and houses along the other. Not exactly where you would expect to see a grizzly bear, let alone 3. Along Bailey Street, the estuary broadens out a bit to about half a mile wide, giving visitors a lush area to stroll along the trail to relieve stress and exercise. One of the primary rules in the estuary is that all dogs remain leashed while visitors walk, but that isn't always observed by people. As Wilma and Snoopy hiked along the trail, Snoopy became distracted by something just off the trail a bit. Wilma called and called to her dog, but Snoopy appeared very interested in whatever it was that caught his fascination. Snoopy was clearly onto something that caught his interest and couldn't be distracted from the object of his focus, no matter how much Wilma called to him. She decided to go over and investigate the situation herself after realizing Snoopy had no intention of responding to her demands. Wilma approached the edge of the trail and could see Snoopy several yards off of it, with his attention dialed into something moving in the brush. It wasn't long before Wilma saw the objects of Snoopy's attention as 2 grizzly cubs peeked from the cover. Now, Wilma was a local. She was a resident of the Squamish area. She knew that the presence of grizzly cubs meant a dangerous situation, and that she was now caught in a quandary. Even though the cubs were harmless in their presence, Wilma knew that where there were grizzly cubs, there was a very protective grizzly mama not far away. Before Wilma could do anything to defuse the dangerous situation, the sensitive nose of the grizzly sow must have caught the woman's scent on the breeze. Undoubtedly, Snoopy's barking had already drawn her attention, but it wasn't clear if she knew that Wilma was nearby or not. As soon as she was aware of a human presence, the sow charged through the brush toward Wilma in an intense and determined display of power and aggression. As Wilma watched the sow grizzly close in on her, the bushes whipped and parted as she tore her path. In a split second, the grizzly had closed in on Wilma as she was paralyzed in terror at its anger. In an attack that only lasted a few seconds, the grizzly bit Wilma, then turned and disappeared back into the brush in the direction of her cubs. The speed and chaos of the sow's attack left Wilma confused and stunned. She struggled to retain her focus and ability to think as the stress paralyzed her. Though she was now safe with the bear having fled, Wilma was injured, bleeding, and in pain. The bite the sow left wasn't fatal or even serious, but the intensity and possibilities of the attack left Wilma dazed. She gathered herself and called Snoopy back to her side. The pair managed to hike back to their vehicle before receiving medical attention. Upon medical examination of her injuries, Wilma's wounds were treated, and she is expected to fully recover from them. Following the altercation, an investigation into Wilma's bear attack was launched, and a search for the sow and her cubs was underway. It lasted for several days, but neither the sow nor her cubs were observed anywhere near the attack site. Officials eventually ended up labeling the sow attack on Wilma as a defensive attack. The factors they used to determine this was the presence of the cubs and the brevity of her attack on Wilma. The presence of the dog likely aggravated the circumstances leading to the attack, but research also indicates that the presence of a dog may limit a bear attack, so results are somewhat inconclusive. The hiking trails around the estuary were closed pending the results of the investigation and opened soon after their conclusion. Wildlife officers urged visitors to give bears plenty of space and carry bear spray. There was no source indicating that Wilma was carrying bear spray or a firearm on her hike along the estuary trail the day she was attacked. Recently, the area around Squamish, particularly in Pemberton Meadows, has been lobbying for the creation of a grizzly bear management specialist. This officer would monitor the grizzlies in the area, based on reports submitted by residents, then intervene with hazing tools to drive them away from town. In cases where problem bears are identified, they may be listed as potential risks to public safety and either relocated to more remote areas or killed to prevent further incidents. Local residents have expressed concern about evolving societal views toward the presence of grizzly bears in areas occupied by human inhabitants, citing that residents of Whistler, Pemberton, Birken, and D'Arcy have had their lives influenced by the presence and threat of grizzly bears in urban or suburban areas. A resolve is forming to change how bears are handled when they visit. With grizzly numbers increasing in areas that people frequent and more people venturing into areas where they may run into bears, the situation has turned into a crisis in its most elemental form. It is clear that a hazing program is supported by residents, and previous success in locations like Big Bear, California, confirms that intervention by a wildlife specialist will help in securing public safety, as well as safety for bears, lured into the ease and protection of human habitation. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think bear spray would have prevented Wilma's attack? If Snoopy had been on a leash, could the outcome have been different? Was the sow acting to protect her cubs, or did she have a different intention? Is it time that residents in bear country insist authorities established hazing programs to drive bears out of urban and suburban areas in locations with bear populations? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to a very familiar location. Our most recent episode discussed a black bear attack in the town of Newcastle, Colorado, and this is also the setting for this episode. As mentioned in our prior episode, the climate here is very mild and called a Mediterranean climate. The summers are warm and dry, with winters that get cold and have significant amount of snowfall. Given it has plenty of sunshine and a relatively small amount of rainfall, the area is surrounded by mountains covered with sagebrush and a few pine trees. With an altitude of just over a mile high, and being surrounded by high mountains, Newcastle doesn't seem like a bear haven. There are plenty of mule deer and elk wandering the hillsides, which find their way into town from time to time. They pose a limited threat to city residents, but the predators here include bobcats, cougars, coyotes, and black bears, which can be dangerous when they encroach on human habitats. In the fall of 2022, residents of Newcastle had begun to see black bears roaming the streets at night from time to time. Our victim, whom we will refer to as Rick, had a black bear visiting his home the last few nights. This time of year there isn't much in the way of calorically rich foods in the sagebrush surrounding town, and the fruit trees, barbecue grills, bird feeders, and garbage cans sent tempting scents aloft on breezes each day. To a starving bear, this can stimulate a dinner bell response, and drive them to investigate in the dark of night. On the evening of October 2nd, 2022, Rick was reclining for the evening when he heard some noise outside his back door. Now, Rick was not taking this invasion of his property lightly. If it was a burglar or a bear, it was about to meet a man who definitely would not tolerate its presence. Rick grabbed his pistol and headed into the inky night, uncertain of what he was about to encounter. Before Rick's eyes could adjust to the darkness, he was knocked from his feet by a powerful and surprising impact. With his mind racing, he knew by the force that his attacker must be the black bear that had been visiting his property on prior evenings. As the bear closed in on Rick, the man pushed his face into his left elbow, bending his arm around his face in hopes of fending off the bear's powerful jaws. He felt the bear's teeth punching holes through his flesh in his left arm and hand as he struck the bear, trying to fend it off. As he fought the bear, Rick reached his right hand out, searching for his pistol, which fell from his grip at the force of the initial blow. Pulling the pistol into his right hand, he turned it toward the bear and fired 3 quick shots from near point-blank range. The rapid gunshots and resistance from the man gave the bear second thoughts about fighting anymore. It turned tail and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Rick in pain, bleeding, and dazed. Now free of the bear's threatening presence, Rick staggered into his house and called one of his relatives. He relayed the details of the bear attack and was encouraged to go to the hospital to get checked out. Wounds from any animal's mouth can transmit infectious bacteria, and getting help right away is the best method of avoiding infection and the complications it can bring. After being transported to the hospital, medical professionals there notified Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials to report the black bear attack. By 1 a.m., they had rounded up the local police and organized a search for the bear along neighborhood roads. While interviewing Rick about the attack, they gathered valuable information and learned that he wasn't positive that any of the bullets fired by him struck the bear. This neither eliminated nor included the potential for a wounded bear to be roaming the streets of Newcastle and added urgency to their search. Upon arriving at Rick's house at 2 a.m., they began to analyze the attack site, but a recent rainstorm had already begun washing away any blood evidence that may have been present. Hoping for some kind of resolution to the search, they sent out notifications to residents urging them to report any wounded or dead bears they may find in the area. As the search for the bear continued, wounds on Rick's arm and hand were cleaned and closed with bandages and sutures. He was released in the early morning hours to heal at his home. Garfield County Sheriff's Department decided to try something new to locate the bear. They sent out a drone equipped with an infrared detector in an attempt to find it. They searched through Monday and the evening before calling off the search for the bear by Tuesday. Though their search revealed a significant amount of bear activity in the area, it was unfruitful in locating the bear involved in Rick's attack. Warnings to residents in the area to safely secure their trash and pick up any fallen fruit in their yards were issued. Making sure that bears have no reason to visit houses is key to maintaining safety from surprise encounters. Rick's black bear attack was the second in several weeks in the small town of Newcastle. The first attack of 2022 was discussed in our prior episode regarding the bear attack on Akasha Jensen. Contributing factors to these attacks may be linked to the lack of food in the area around the town, in addition to the sense of human civilization. Hungry bears may be desperate enough to search for additional calories in places they normally wouldn't look during the hyperphagia of fall as they try to fatten up for hibernation. In the state of Colorado, there are reported to be 17,000 to 20,000 black bears residing there, with thousands of incident reports of bear activity having been provided. Only 4 fatal wild bear attacks have occurred in Colorado in its history. With a black bear population density of a single bear for every 20 square miles, Colorado's bear population is high and could present a growing potential danger to humans and domestic animals if not balanced, and they are hazed away from towns and residences. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. What other course of action could Rick have taken to confront the bear and chase it away from his home? Given the bear was habituated to human residences, should local police and wildlife officers have taken a greater role in hazing the bears out of town? If Rick hadn't placed his face in his elbow, do you think that bear may have bitten his neck or face? Would bear spray have prevented this attack? I will gladly read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.